Now, this is a tank you don't see me play very often, not because I think it's a bad tank or anything like that, just because I tend to play the tier 9 in this line a lot more. This is the 121, the tier 10 Chinese medium tank. It's basically a stretched Wheezy 120 with a slightly better gun and better soft stats, but it's very, very similar to the Wheezy 120, and so I just play the 120 more often, since I generally prefer to play tier 9s. This tank is quite curious for a medium. Like the Wheezy 120, it's very mobile with decent armor and a very, very hard hitting gun. This is basically a Chinese copy of the M62, the top gun for both the IS-8 and the IS-4. So you're a medium carrying a T10 heavy gun, basically. It pays for this in other regards. It's not quite as agile as the Soviet mediums. It's larger, being slightly longer, and its armor isn't quite as good. It has a weaker turret and a stronger turret and weaker hull than the T54 or the T62, I believe. On live oaks, I generally bring Chinese mediums into the town. It's where they work best. They only have 3 degrees, I believe, of gun depression, so going out on the rails isn't a wise plan. But if you come into a city like this, you've got no shortage of targets on flat ground that you can just pound shells into, and a lot of pubbies do not actually realise how hard this thing hits. As you can see, it goes quite happily into the high 400s and mid 500s. I think the highest roll you can get off this thing is 550. Penetration's not bad. It is 258 with AP, which is about on par with most of the other T10 mediums. Gun handling is actually surprisingly good for the class of gun that this tank carries. Better than it was on the Wheezy 120, but at times it still does some irritating things like that. If I had just sat there and taken a hit and aimed a bit longer, I would have no doubt hit that shot. And there we go again. So it's capable of mid-range shootouts, but it's not ideally suited to it. If I was in one of my Soviet mediums, this would be working out a lot better in my favour. Then again, I wouldn't be peeking and poking, I'd just sit there and dump shots. The 121, because of its armour, its mobility, and its gun, is quite decent at peek and poke engagements in cities. It's very good at harassing heavies who are distracted by other things, because you can just pop out, slam them for a lot of health, and then duck back into cover before they can even react. Here I see that we've got town pretty much locked down. It's just a IS-7 left up there, and so I head back towards the D-line ridge to try and put up a defense by cap. Still got just over half my health, still got plenty of ammo, so it shouldn't be too bad. I've got 2 light tanks here who are not really spotting for us. That would have been a lot better if I'd manually aimed. I'm not sure why I didn't. I think because I was trying to say something. Shot dropped over the rails and hit him in the engine deck. It's use of shot arc right there. Overall, this gun isn't bad. The velocity's okay. It's not as good as the Soviet mediums or anything with an L7 for obvious reasons, but it's not bad. Penetration's good. The damage it does is fucking superb for a medium tank. And DPM wise, I think this thing's fairly high. Not as high as the STB or the Soviet mediums, but still quite good. It's not so great on the move, but then again, you wouldn't want it to be with a gun this big. It would just be completely overpowered. here our team hasn't actually managed to kill that IS-7 yet. Sterling's in there having a battle to the death with it. I back up just to see if there's any angles I can get to help. Unfortunately not, but Henko goes in, as does the Waffenträger, so no doubt that will be taken care of pretty quickly. I roll forwards again, so I've got view over the bridge. At this point I suspect the enemy team has actually started to turn around and head back. And in fact a couple of them are beginning to come out towards city from the direction of their cap. So I roll up here, get a nice auto-aim snapshot into the STB. It's an STB, so I know I could get away with that. For those who aren't aware, the reticle's still bugged when you auto-aim in replays, so I was actually aiming at him. The reticle was just pointing at some random part of the map. It's an irritating bug. I'm not sure if 9.1 fixes it. I think it does. I can't recall. I'll be recording some videos from the 9.1 test server, which probably won't show up until long after 9.5 is out, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, the stuff in town gets cleaned up, leaving Sterling and the Waffenträger to head for the enemy cap, and so I begin to push up the rails to clean up the last pockets of resistance there. Now, one of the other things I should note about the 121 and the Wheezy 120, like I said, they are very similar, is as well as having quite bad gun depression, they also have very bad elevation, because the gun is just so huge, it's a wonder it fits in that turret at all. So it's something to keep in mind. Hills are not your friend in this tank. Like hull-down tanks, I think the Chinese mediums take a really good sense of terrain to play well. You have to know where you can and can't go and still depress your gun. So I get a nice broadside on the E4 here. Low rolls in, but he starts paying attention to me instead of my teammates heading towards his cap, and there I whiff a shot horribly, but not as horribly as him. He bounced an APCR round, in fact, off, I think, the side of my turret. Or perhaps even the side of my hull, considering how I was angled. I let the scouts run up ahead a little, but they don't seem to want to. They are actually platooned. They have almost the same name as well. Usually that's a serious warning sign. Either way, they finally do spot the E4. I roll up, go for the cupola shot. Remember that the cupola is a weak spot on the E4. On the E3 it's actually not. It's as tough as the front armor. So knowing the difference between the two Tier 10 American tank destroyers is quite important. I miss a shot on the tortoise. Waffenträger doesn't. And my next shot connects pretty comfortably. Now it's just the E4 left. I could cut right and use the terrain to screen me, but at this point he's backed himself down into a little gully there, and I'm not really worried because it's the end of the game, so I just drive straight across into the open. I catch him as he crests the hill trying to get the AMX, and put a pretty low roll through his side, and then her Waffenträger shoots HE and fucking pays for it. Nearly gets me killed, actually, because that shot was bad. Very bad shot, actually. And that one was even worse. Now, what caused that is that tiny little bump there, right in front of my tank. As soon as I reversed over that, my gun bucked up in the air because no gun depression, and it got me hit. This is a thing you have to be cautious of in the 121. I managed to get him anyway though, which caps off a nice 6.2k damage gain. The reason I don't play this so much, like I said, is because I usually play the 120 more. I do have quite a few videos of the 120 up, not so many of the 121. I don't know, I do like the tank. It's a really nice one. It's quite fun to play. It's just, there are other tier 10s I like playing more, and if I want to play my Chinese mediums, I usually just play the Wheezy 120. But who knows, maybe I'll get some more videos up of it one day. Definitely a tank I recommend playing. If you're decent enough at the game to know how gun depression works and know the terrain of the maps, it's definitely one that's worth getting, because you can really make it work for you if you know how to put the gun to use. I would say on a scale of difficulty, American tanks are the easiest to play in the game. Soviets are probably the next level up from that. Then British and Chinese, German tanks are kind of like intermediate difficulty, and the French are the hardest. I'm not sure where the Japanese sit, honestly. Probably somewhere around the middle of the pack as well. They are quite fragile, but they generally have decent guns for their tier. So, I mean, it is more of an intermediate tank. I wouldn't recommend jumping straight into it if it's your first tier 10, but if you have a good idea of what you're doing, you can really make it work for you, as you can see in this game.